In my video today, I want to share my personal process because I think it might be interesting to know that as an art therapist, the journey doesn't end just because you've finished the training. It's only the beginning, really. And my inner work is taking up a lot of my time at the moment. So I want to take full advantage of the fact that we are in the waning phase of the moon. So that means that not long ago we had a full moon and now we're in the waning part, which means that basically it's a very good time for inner work and reflection and relaxation and just resting. And in order for us to, or for me, to prepare myself for the inner work, there's an exercise that I find helpful and I like to do. And it's very simple. You can do it, and I sometimes use my graphite, I sometimes use my pencil. In this case, I'll use the pencil. Normally I use the graphite for the Foam Drawing Friday, but in this case I use the pencil. What I do is I draw inward spirals. So you may have seen the video where I talked about and showed how you can do circles. Maybe put a link to it. So you can go and check that out if you want. So, you know, I start off by drawing a circle, just to mark this is where I am, this is who I am. And then when I feel ready, I start my inward going spiral. So obviously, now that I'm explaining this to you, it's harder to be really present for me, because really when you're doing this, if you want to try and do this for your own inner work, you should be quiet. It's a time for reflection, and you can't reflect if you have noise around you, if you have people talking or music playing or things, then that gets in the way. You start listening to the music, start floating away on the music, which is fine in other circumstances. But when you're doing this exercise, I would strongly recommend that you're doing it in silence, so that you have a really good chance of just, you know, making sure that you're fully present. So obviously you can do a very large spiral if you feel like it. You can do some smaller spirals. I would recommend not doing them. Don't do them too small, you know, because then it just becomes a fiddle and you can't really see and you can't really feel. As an anthroposophical art therapist, the size does matter. You do have to do things at a certain scale to get a really good effect. So the other thing that I would say is that I like to do is to not get too tight with my spiral. So this is a fairly loose. It's not very loose. It's not very tight. So spiral. So what I'll just show you what I mean by too tight a spiral. I'll draw a spiral here. Because there are so many different people in this world, people do things differently, of course. But you might think, if if you've seen the exercise that I do with people when they come to see me the first time, I sort of stress that you have to really make sure that there's lots of lines. But if you're doing that with a spiral, then this is what happens. So if you're having basically, I hope you can see what's happening here. It's basically just a circle getting smaller. It's not actually spiraling inwards because the lines are too close together. So, you know, if you're doing this because you want to really go in depth with what you're doing, then that becomes almost impossible to see that it is a spiral when you're going in like this. So the other thing not to do, so don't do this. I'll just do a little red cross on this. I would never do this. This is bad. The other thing to be aware of if you're drawing a spiral is not to do something like that. That's not giving you enough process. It's not giving you enough time to get to your inner part. So as bad as this is not good for your getting to your innermost core, your innermost being either. So, you know, something like this. Maybe even with a bit more. So I'm trying to draw one which I think is the way it should look. So I start off with getting what I think is a fairly good round circle. And I'm not going round too fast, but I'm not going round too slow either. So that's a reasonably good sort of spiral. And of course you can go over your spiral again, but it demands that you're really paying attention, not talking the way I'm doing now, so that you're sort of not ending up with, in the end, not being able to sort of see your spiral. Because if you go over your lines over and over again, you might end up with a sort of mishmash of lines. That can easily happen when you're going like this. Then your lines are kind of in different places. And in the end, if you're doing it many times, you end up watering down. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Watering down your spiral so that you, in the end, you have so many lines going all over the place that, you can't really see where your original spiral was, because you sort of, as you can see, the lines are beginning to merge. That's maybe the word I'm looking for. So my lines are beginning to merge, and so it becomes more like this and not a clear spiral going inwards. So that's one of the things that I would say. So that's a good one. That one there, not so good either. The other thing that I like to do when I'm doing this is thinking about the pressure. So I like to sort of have my circle, and I'm drawing it lightly, only just letting the tip of the pencil touch the paper. And then I'm again, lightly moving my pencil in and keeping my pencil light. And as I get closer to the center, I'm pressing down harder with my pencil, so you can see the pencil mark is sharper in the middle. And I'm doing that because I find that I'm lightly moving from the external world in to my internal world, just going lightly into my internal world. I have to work my way in. And I think if you're a person who maybe need to be really anchored, then pressing down a little bit harder as you get towards your center means now, to me it feels like now I've arrived, and I'm slowing down. I'm also slowing down as I'm pressing down harder. It means that I'm slowing down, and that means eventually I stop where I'm supposed to go, where I want to go. I want to go from the external mess and noise and external influences to my internal calm, where I feel I maybe need to hold myself. Personally, I'm a very extrovert person, so going into a circle for me is, in a way, quite a lot of work. So when I get to my very most inner core, then that's where I need to hold myself in order to really do that inner work. So that's what I wanted to share. I'll maybe just show you some examples of working the circle with colours, because that also has an effect. When I work with colours and the spiral going in, there are some colours which for me definitely tend to work better. So the blue, when I work with the blue going in, I get a sense of calm, and that's good for going inwards because it's a time of reflection. So blue for me is a sense of calm. Now, if I work with a yellow, if I try doing the spiral with a yellow colour, it sort of almost hurts my eyes. It's, for me, that spiral isn't aiding in my feeling of going inwards. It's too bright, and my internal world is not yellow. So how about green then? If I'm working with green, and I suggest if you haven't tried this, you could try doing this. What's it like working with a green inward going spiral? It's definitely making me slow down all naturally. It makes me kind of slow down. It's calming, and it sort of makes me feel like going around the circle slowly and gently. So I think green is another good colour for me to use going into as a prep for inner work. So what about a red? The red sort of makes it harder to actually start going inwards for me. And it's it almost feels like I don't really want to go in with the red. I just want to stay outside in the circle, outside. So red is, it's not a good way of for me of going in. The orange, an orange circle, then what is that then like? Because that's, orange of course is a colour between yellow and red, neither of those are suitable for the inward going spiral. I think the orange for me is a very vigorous, it's very sort of energetic colour, and I'm not sure that it's very good for a time of reflection and rest and pause. It might be really good to use an orange for going out of a spiral. I think the orange would be great for that, but not for actually going in. It's a sort of colour which has lots of energy in it. So what then about a purple? Using a purple for our circle. So I think the purple feels very sort of steady. It's almost it's not quite still, but it's a very steady kind of colour for me. It's very sort of controlled, and I think it works well, just like the blue, it works well for, sort of nice, calm manner going into your circle. Sort of a little bit, maybe a little bit too controlled, but you can work on maybe loosening that up. So then that leaves us with the brown colour, which is a colour that some people really like, earth tones and natural colours, the tertiary colours. It's not usually a favourite colour of mine, but often when I have tried working with the brown, it sort of gives a bit more of a grounding feeling. So often there's sort of a darker line towards the bottom here, because you're sort of grounded, and it's sort of, when the crayon comes towards you, it just naturally creates a heavier, or when the crayon comes towards me, I should say, it creates a heavier kind of coloured line at the bottom. So that's also a colour. It's not a colour that I would necessarily choose to use for this particular exercise. And then there's the last colour that I'll show you that I also sometimes use, and it's the pink colour. Now, you may not be able to actually see this because it's even hard for me to sort of see the colour on the paper here. Not hard, but it's, you know, I have to kind of really make sure that I look initially. So now that I've gone around it a couple of times, maybe you can see that there's a pink outline here. So it's a very delicate colour, the pink. And when I start going into the circle, I basically can't really see where the crayon's been. Which means that I really have to focus on the motion, and that sort of makes me slow down a bit. Makes me sort of naturally slow down more than I would have maybe otherwise done. And in a way, I like that. I like the fact that it makes me slow down, because that's what this exercise is meant to do, is preparing me for that maybe meditation that I'm going to do afterwards, and preparing me to just really slow down and get to the very core. And also I really like pastel-y colours, so of course that helps, but the fact that I can't really see it is, in a way, is quite nice. Maybe if I hold this up like this, you'll be able to see that there are some lines on the paper. So that's what I do in order to prepare myself for some inner work. That's all for this time. Bye for now.